What if the life you're living right now isn't actually your real life? What if, behind the routine, the deadlines, the dreams that no longer excite you, there's something else? A kind of alternate version of yourself, freer, more aware, more whole, trying to break through. That strange feeling you keep having, like something's off, something's missing. It's not random, it's a sign. That coincidence that felt too perfect to be an accident. That dream that keeps coming back. That emptiness that shows up, even when everything should be fine. These are the whispers of your soul. You may not have noticed, but maybe, just maybe, you're being called. Called to change. But before we go any deeper, take a breath with me. Right now, seriously, breathe in and out. Because what you're about to hear isn't just another video about spirituality. It's a hidden nap, a warning, a mirror. You're about to discover the 7 clear signs that your soul is trying to change your life, even if your mind is still resisting it. But deep down, you know you're ready. If this is resonating with you, if some part of you recognizes what's being said, then congratulations, you're on the right path. Before we go deeper, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. That tells YouTube this kind of message matters to you and helps it reach others who may need it just as much. There comes a moment in life when nothing makes sense anymore. And strangely, that's when the truth finally starts to show itself. You feel like you're waking up from a strange dream, but you can't quite explain what's changed. The same places, the same people, the same conversations, but you're not the same anymore. It's not that the world got weird, it's that you're starting to see it with new eyes. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, a quiet awakening where forgotten parts of yourself begin to ask for attention. It's not a crisis, it's a rebirth. And more often than not, it hurts, not because you're lost, but because you're shedding the version of yourself you got used to being. And that's why so many people miss the signs, because they're subtle but powerful. You begin to question your relationships. Work no longer lights you up. Old dreams start to feel small. And this strange emptiness shows up where there used to be certainty. But that emptiness is a doorway. Today, you're going to understand exactly what it's trying to show you. In this video, we'll explore the 7 clear signs that your soul is calling you into deep transformation. These signs aren't random. They're hidden messages, the language of the unconscious. And once you learn to recognize them, you'll see that nothing is falling apart. Everything is being rearranged so you can find your way back to yourself. So, have you noticed any strange signs in your life lately? Let us know in the comments. What do you feel is changing inside you? You start to drift away from people, but not in a dramatic way. It's quiet, almost invisible. Conversations that used to flow now feel forced. Meetings feel empty. Your interest disappears. And you wonder if something is wrong with you. But no, there's nothing wrong at all. When the soul begins to move, the first thing it does is retreat. Carl Jung said that the process of individuation begins with a rupture. The soul pulls the senses inward, turns down the noise, and pushes you back into yourself. Suddenly, the world feels distant, like you're watching life through someone else's eyes. That's one of the first signs. The distance you're feeling isn't rejection, it's realignment. Your soul is trying to remind you of who you really are. And to do that, it needs to clear what no longer resonates. Even if that means letting go of people, places, habits, even those parts of yourself you thought were permanent, but that were only there out of habit. At first, this distance feels like pain. It feels like loneliness. But if you have the courage to stay with it, something begins to shift. You begin to feel a strange peace, a kind of silence that doesn't hurt. It reveals. And maybe this is the first real lesson. The loneliness you're experiencing now isn't abandonment. It's a doorway. And while you're walking through that unfamiliar space, something even subtler begins to emerge. The things you used to love, the ones that once defined you, begin to lose their light. It's like someone turned off a switch inside. You look at your old goals, your old dreams, and feel nothing. It's disturbing. You try to force yourself to care again, but you can't. And that's when the fear creeps in. The doubt. Did I lose my passion? Am I falling into depression? But no, what's happening is a release. Your soul is clearing space. It knows that what once moved you has served its purpose. It no longer fits, not on the path it's now leading you toward. And what looks like apathy is actually the beginning of something new. It's the moment between the end and the beginning, between a chapter that's closing and one that hasn't yet revealed its face. And in that in-between, there's silence, there's stillness, there's a discomfort that feels almost unbearable, because the ego doesn't know how to live in the void. But the soul, it does. It knows the value of nothingness. And there, in that suspended state where nothing makes sense anymore, something else begins to rise. Your dreams. But not just any dreams. Vivid ones, strange ones, full of symbols and faces you've never seen. Places that seem familiar but don't belong to this world. Images that stick with you for hours after you wake up. And you start to notice that some images repeat. Numbers, doors, mirrors, labyrinths, clocks. Why? Jung believed that dreams are messages from the unconscious, and the unconscious doesn't speak in words. It speaks in symbols. It sends coded signals, fragments of a wisdom that lives beyond logic. But we've been taught to ignore anything we can't explain. We were trained to distrust our intuition, but the unconscious is patient. It repeats. It persists until you finally stop and listen. And when you start paying attention, everything begins to shift. You notice that your dreams are connected to your emotions, that the weird image from last night reflects a feeling you pushed away during the day. You realize that your mind is trying to show you something your voice doesn't yet know how to say. And it doesn't stop there. In your waking life, patterns start to repeat too. The same situations, just with different people. The same conflicts, the same lessons. It's like you're stuck in a loop, reliving the same story in different costumes. And in a way, you are. You're in a cycle, but not as punishment, as education. The universe, the unconscious, even time itself, all of it reshapes to give you another chance to choose differently, to respond differently, to break the loop. But you only notice this when you start truly observing, when you finally ask the question, what is this trying to teach me? And that question opens doors, internal ones, because behind every repetition, there's a hidden belief, a fear, a memory. Maybe you learned early on that love must be earned, that your value depends on pleasing others, that you must never fail, and those silent ideas shape your choices, even when you think you're in control. But now, you're beginning to wake up. You're starting to see the pattern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You recognize that those relationships where you felt invisible carry the same emotional tone as that distant childhood. You realize that the jobs that suffocate you mirror the pressure you internalized long ago. And all of this begins to rise to the surface. Yes, it hurts, but it's also freeing. Because now you have a choice, a chance to respond differently, to no longer repeat, to no longer react in the same old ways. And in that moment, something inside you ignites. It's not joy, not peace, not love. It's a longing, a quiet, unmistakable desire to go deeper, to truly know yourself, to discover what's beneath the version of you the world knows. This desire is subtle but persistent. It pulls you towards strange books, unexpected videos, conversations that feel sacred. You find yourself drawn to things you used to overlook: spirituality, deep psychology, purpose, meaning. And those words that once seemed vague now sound like keys. You start to suspect there's something hidden behind ordinary reality, something that's always been there, but you never knew how to see. That's your soul calling. It's her essence, trying to come home. And at this point, there's no turning back. You might try to pretend that nothing's changing. You might try to force yourself to live the way you used to. You might even succeed for a while. But deep down, you know, you've already crossed the threshold. You've seen too much, felt too much, realized too much. And the soul, it doesn't forget. It will keep whispering, keep sending signs, keep nudging you, sometimes gently, sometimes painfully, until you accept the truth. Something inside you is changing, and it's not small. It's a change of cycle, a change of identity, a change of existence. And even if things still feel unclear, there's a quiet certainty being born, a certainty that doesn't come from the mind, but from the body. You feel that you're moving in the right direction, even if you don't yet know where it leads. You feel that, even with fear, you can't go back, because the old world no longer recognizes you, and the new world hasn't arrived yet. You're in the middle, in the space between, at the edge of the known, and it's exactly here that transformation happens. It's not fast, it's not easy, but it's real. And when you look closely, you realize the signs were always there. They were just waiting for you to be ready to see. There comes a point in your journey when you realize something uncomfortable. The world didn't change, but the way you see it has. What used to distract you now feels too loud. The certainties you leaned on no longer hold your weight. You begin questioning everything, not out of rebellion, but from a place of truth, a place within you that simply wants silence to think. And in that silence, something else begins to stir. It's not sadness, it's not fear, it's something harder to name, a kind of still restlessness. As if you're standing right at the edge of something massive, but you have no idea what it is. This is where many people get lost or find themselves. You feel like you're no longer the person you once were, but you still don't know who you're becoming. This is the space between your old self and your new one, a realm of transition. Jung called it symbolic death, the end of an identity, and that's why it hurts so deeply. You're not just changing habits, you're burying entire versions of yourself, and grief is part of awakening. But strangely enough, the more you allow yourself to die inside, the more space you create for what's next. And it's in that space that the most subtle and powerful signs begin to appear. Coincidences happen too often to be ignored. You think about someone and they message you. You're struggling with a question, and the exact answer shows up in a book, a video, a stranger's words. You start finding meaning in the most unexpected places, and you ask yourself, is this just coincidence? Jung had a name for it, synchronicity. Events that seem unrelated in the physical world, but are deeply connected in the symbolic one. Messages from your unconscious mind showing you there's an invisible thread linking it all. And that thread is being pulled. The more you pay attention, the more these signals multiply, but they only show up when you're ready to see them. Because before that, they were always there. You just didn't have the right eyes yet. It's like the universe has been whispering to you all along, and now finally, you can hear. And perhaps the most surprising thing is that the strongest signs don't always feel gentle. Sometimes, what transforms you the most is what hurts the most. Repetitive patterns return. Situations you thought you'd healed suddenly resurface. Relationships you thought were done still have echoes buried deep. Old emotions rise like ghosts of your past, and you find yourself right back where you started. But you're not the same, because now you see it differently, and that changes everything. Cycles don't repeat to punish you. They repeat to teach you. You will live the same pain again and again until you choose a new response. You will meet the same people in different faces until you finally see which part of you still needs healing. The outside world mirrors the arrangement of your inner world, and realizing this frees you. You begin to understand that every frustration, every loop, every breakdown is a clue, a reflection, a chance to understand the language of your soul. But understanding it is only the beginning. The hardest part comes next, acting differently. Because recognizing the pattern is easy, breaking it is where the real work begins. Saying no where you always said yes, staying silent where you once shouted, speaking up where you once hid. It takes courage, awareness, and most of all, compassion. Compassion for your wounded parts. Because you will fall back. You'll slip into old behaviors. You'll doubt yourself. And that is part of the process. True transformation isn't linear. It spirals. You rise, you fall, you pause, you return, you resist, you surrender. And then one day, without realizing it, you change. You notice that the old trigger doesn't sting anymore, that the old wound has softened, that the scared part of you feels calmer now. And when that happens, something new is born. A silent craving, almost like a calling. You begin seeking something deeper. You don't know what it is, but you know it's real. You know it matters. That calling pulls you into unexpected places. You might start exploring spirituality. You might find ancient books that speak of things you can't explain. You might stumble into traditions that talk about energy, soul, archetypes. Maybe none of it makes logical sense, but something inside you knows. It knows there's truth here, and that truth begins to reshape you. You stop looking for quick answers. You start asking better questions. You stop trying to fix everything and begin to simply observe. You stop trying to become someone else and start remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. This is the moment the ego begins to relax. For the first time, it accepts that it's not in control. And ironically, that's when life begins to truly flow. You start meeting people who resonate with your new energy. Connections feel familiar, even when they're brand new, as if they're reunions, not introductions. And you realize you're more present, more whole, more connected, even in the hard moments. Because now, you're no longer chasing perfection. You're walking toward truth. And truth isn't always pretty, but it's always liberating. You understand that growth isn't about becoming something else. It's about shedding. Letting go of what isn't you. What was placed on you. What fear built. It's about returning to your essence. And in that return, you discover something sacred, your real self. Not the idealized version, but the actual one. With light and shadow, with chaos and calm, with flaws and brilliance. And you see that spiritual awakening isn't a magical event. It's a continuous unfolding, a daily unpeeling, a series of tiny deaths and quiet rebirths. And the more you surrender, the more life responds. With signs, with synchronicities, with clarity, you start living from the inside out. And even when the path makes no sense, you feel you're being guided, and that is enough. Because now, for the first time, you trust. Not because everything's clear, but because even in the confusion, there's peace. And that peace didn't come from outside. It was always there, hidden behind fear, behind noise, behind your mask. All it needed was silence. And now that you found it, everything shifts. You become someone who chooses from the heart, who listens deeper, who moves slower, who feels more. And maybe, just maybe, that's the whole point of this journey. Not to understand the mystery, but to become it. And if something in you right now is whispering, yes, this is it, then trust it. Because the very fact that you're here, hearing this, feeling this, is a sign. And maybe, just maybe, it's the one you've been waiting for. Maybe the hardest sign to ignore is exhaustion. But not the kind your body feels. It's something deeper. a quiet kind of tiredness that rest can't fix. Because it's not physical, it's existential. You feel like something inside you wants to pause, not to give up, but to listen. To listen to that part of you that's been whispering for years. The part that always knew you weren't born just to survive, but to transform. And if you've made it this far, this isn't an accident. Maybe that strange feeling that's been following you lately isn't weakness. Maybe it's strength, finally trying to emerge. And it won't show up loud. It arrives gently, through a memory, a repeated dream, a silence deeper than any word. Now, it's up to you. You can ignore it, go back to autopilot, or you can follow it. You can take the next step, the one no one else can take for you. And that step might be closer than you think. It might be in the next video that's about to appear on your screen. And maybe, just maybe, it's exactly what you need right now. See you soon, and I'll meet you in the next video.